Welcome back to the Taikin Ramen channel. Today we're tackling low hydration noodles, specifically focusing on 7 tips to make low hydration noodles using a Kitchenaid stand mixer for rolling. Noodles get tricky at low hydration, but if SpongeBob can handle it, so can we.
I don't need it. I don't need it. I definitely don't need it.
We're going to be making a 150 gram serving of 29% hydration noodles today. I'll put the recipe on the screen for you now. My first tip is to use a quality kansui with phosphates to encourage hydration. Phosphates are typically used in the sausage industry to keep things hydrated, and the same logic can be applied to noodles. This type 3 powder from the Ramen Supply Company has sodium tripolyphosphate and sodium hexametaphosphate. When the noodles are this dry, every little bit counts, and these phosphates are doing the most. Plus, this powder is cheap, available online, so it's a no-brainer. As an added feature, all of the kansuis from the Ramen Supply Company dissolve really nicely in water, so you don't have to use your chopsticks to break up any kansui crystals. Next, we're moving over to the food processor, which is in itself our second tip. When the dough is this dry, you can mix all you like. It's just going to be this ramen sand-like mixture until you force it into dough. For that reason, I like to use a food processor because it really breaks the ramen sand up for even hydration. Make sure to scrape down the sidewalls, just like you would if you were using a stand mixer to combine. And once the dough is uniform, we can get to bagging. Our third tip is about dimensions. When crafting our sheet of dough, we want it to conveniently fit in the Kitchenaid dough roller attachment. If you fold a 1 gallon Ziploc bag in half, you'll find that it does the job perfectly.
It's like, I was made for this.
Add your ramen sand to a Ziploc and then fold it in half. Spread it as evenly as you can within half of the bag. Now, lay down a towel or put your bag within another bag and stomp the sand into a dough. You can see here that the dough that runs along the natural edges of the bag has a clean shape, but the dough that bumped up on the fold we made is a little thinner and has already developed some cracks. The stand mixer will exaggerate these imperfections, so our fourth tip is to roll the edges over on themselves like a little rip curl wave, just to give them a little sturdiness. No need to take the dough out of the bag to get this done. You will need to stomp on the change you just made to solidify it. Then, rest the dough for 1 hour. Tip number 5 is simple. That dough is not going to want to come out of the bag without a fight. So I recommend performing a little C-section and cutting the dough out of the bag with scissors. Alright, onto the roller. The challenge we face is that Kitchenaid dough rollers do not go very wide. So even on the widest setting, our dough is going to develop some splits and cracks. It may even split into multiple pieces. Don't panic.
Now I'm losing him. What do I do? What do I do?
What are you talking about? Pull yourself together!
I'm going to start with a lamination after my first run through the roller. Tip number 6 is, when laminating, use a rolling pin to flatten the folded edge of your dough as much as possible. This will help the roller to grip it, and that helps the dough to come together. You can also flatten the sides. After another pass on the widest setting, the dough sheet is in 2 pieces, and that's okay. I'm going to run each of the pieces individually through the roller until they're at the 5 thickness. Then tip number 7 is to do some minor surgery, lay the pieces on top of each other, and roll one end thin as if we were just doing a normal lamination. After this, start rolling from the widest setting all the way down to 8, and check that out. Now this is starting to look familiar. I repeated the process for a 3rd and 4th lamination, but I stopped there, referencing the Yamato article about firmness and the breakdown of gluten bonds with excessive lamination. I wanted to do fewer laminations, but this was really required just to get the dough to come together. As you continue passing your dough through the roller, just be really careful that you have it exactly lined up. If you put the dough in on any sort of an angle, it is going to break, and all of that work you did is going to be interrupted pretty hard. I'm planning a ramen night for 3 guests plus me, so I made 4 servings of these dry boys. No need to dust these with cornstarch, they couldn't stick to each other if they tried. I aged the noodles for 1 day at room temperature, and then 4 days in the refrigerator. They boiled up in 1 minute and really came out phenomenal. As opposed to a higher hydration noodle, these noodles had their own shape and strength and were satisfyingly firm. Low hydration noodles have the capacity to absorb the flavors around them, and these ones paired wonderfully with a new chorizo tonkotsu recipe I've been working on. 10 out of 10 would repeat, these noodles were dope. Thanks for joining me on another noodle adventure. Hopefully you found these tips helpful. Please reach out if you have any questions, and let me know if you're going to try making these noodles yourself. The chorizo tonkotsu you saw at the end will probably be my next video, and I look forward to seeing you then. Please consider subscribing for more.